Hello, everybody. It's DJ Jazzy Cat, and we are back with Ann Canfield finding strength today. Today is a Wednesday. She's got us covered for lots of great information. As always, she brings it to the table and much more. Just a little quick side note for everybody that's listening in. You can also find Ann now on Pandora, along with radio.net and, of course, the chillfactor.net. Good afternoon, Ann. How are you?
I am doing amazing. I'm so happy to be here, to say the least, because I am very excited about this topic today, as I am with all the topics. And so today, in today's series, we're in our series that is all about relationships and building relationships in our life, because we recognize how important that is. And we build relationships one conversation at a time. So our first episode in this series was called Connection versus Communication. This episode is about having a champion and being a champion. Now, I don't know how many of you might know this, but I actually live in Connecticut. My husband and I are UConn basketball fans. We love to go to the UConn basketball games, and they actually have won the national title now 2 years in a row for March Madness for basketball, college basketball. And the reason why I bring that up is because a champion is somebody who's an advocate, a supporter, somebody who is literally on your side regardless whether or not you win or lose. Because as we know, when you support a team, you don't know going into every game whether or not they're going to lose or win. But I will promise you that even when UConn loses a game, we are still there to be a champion for them and to support them in that program. So I'm gonna kind of start with a story, because the other way we're going to look at this word champion is that champions in our life, and even when we are a champion for somebody, it doesn't need to be a relationship that lasts forever. So my husband and I used to live in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I was pregnant with our son at the time, and we went up to Sedona to visit our friends. And we were there for Thanksgiving, and our friends had invited one of their friends to dinner. And they had kind of asked us what our story is and about the baby that we were expecting. And I had stated to them how, we're kind of thinking of possibly moving to Connecticut at a future date, because my husband's entire family lives in Connecticut. And I will never forget that wonderful woman, I don't even know her name, she would occasionally look over at me and give me this smile and say, "You're going to move to Connecticut sooner than you think. I can just feel it. I know, and I can see it. I can see that you really have this longing to be near family." And at the time, it was the farthest thing from my mind was moving from Scottsdale, Arizona, because we loved Arizona for a lot of reasons. And the reason why I bring that story up is because I've only seen that woman one time, but for that moment, she was a champion in my life to truly encourage me that if that is where your heart is, then that's what you should go after. You should follow that longing that you have to be near family. And I'll never forget it. So today we're going to talk about 3 different things. We're going to actually kind of define about champions and what they look like. We're going to talk about the various types of champions. And we're going to talk about how do we show up as a champion for other people. So when we talk about defining a champion, I gave you 2 examples. I talked about being a UConn fan and a champion of a team, regardless whether they win or lose. And sometimes those are like long-term relationships when we kind of have a following of a team or even a person in our life that We love them through thick or thin, regardless of the circumstances they're just in our life. But I also gave you that story of the woman in Sedona that we have met one time. But that woman still counts. And part of the reason when we define a champion that we want to look at it as somebody who is actively listening to us. They challenge us, they celebrate us, and they're on our side. And it's the part of looking across at somebody else and looking them in the eyes, and you see that their intention and their motive is to be there for you. And in some cases, it's the fact that you look into somebody's eyes and you are there for another person. But we recognize that a person's motive and intention is out of love, pure, selfless kindness and love. And there's not an ounce of anything that's in it for them. They truly have their heart and their mind set on you, and they're 100% present. And so that's kind of a really important point, because sometimes we think, well, these champions are these best friends that we have that we've known for years. And I really want you and challenge you to kind of look at that a little bit differently, that just because someone might be in your life for a season, if they play that role for you and they give that love and kindness to you, to recognize that as a champion of your world. Because the next part we talk about is the various types of champions that we have. I want you each to think about like a radar, and think about a radar or a target board, kind of like a dartboard that you would have. And to recognize that there are champions that might be on the outskirts of the bullseye. And these are people that might be there for a day or a month. They might share a common activity with you. They might be these kind of on the outskirts. They're these people that are champions for the moment, a shared experience. But you still see that value of their intention and their accepting of you as a person. It's just a very narrow scope or focus, right? As we get closer to the bullseye, we find that there's these other champions that seriously fill our heart with love when we see them. It's these people that our eyes light up when we see them coming. And those people might be different than the people that when you walk in a room, their eyes light up. Because there always doesn't have to be that one-for-one relationship, but to kind of open up that door to say, here's the champions in my life that I give to them, and I'm the champions for them. There might be different people where they're champions for us. What do you think about that concept, Kathleen?
I think it's amazing that you should have that opportunity to be able to see how people can actually cheer you on and support you. And I think with keeping that small, it actually will resonate more so than trying to find many champions.
Exactly. And it's very fascinating, because sometimes people will give us a kind word, or somebody will come into our life and they'll play a role for a small amount of time. And we might not give credit to that, but to recognize, to let that land when somebody sees who you are and gives that love and kindness to you. That for that moment that you shared, that you showed up, and it really tells of who you are and the influence that you have in the world. So it's important that we see that we can be champions for others, but also it's also the idea of how do we show up as champions for somebody else. So we kind of talked about that receiving part of that love and kindness. Now let's consider, how do we show up as a champion for someone else? And this kind of goes back a little bit to the last episode that was all about the fact of connection versus just communicating, and recognizing what is the need in somebody else that I can help fill. How can I be a resource and meet another human being where they are today to help them on their journey? I know for me, I've had quite a bit of adversity throughout my world. And as I always tell my husband, our adversity will be our advantage, because my goal and hope is that the adversity and the struggles that we have had will, in the end of the day, become our strength, not for my benefit, but for me to help another person on their journey. And when I say help them on their journey, it's not because I know any more than they do, but it's because I have that sense of empathy and understanding that maybe I can help fill that need for them, that I know what that need is, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, it does.
So it's very, very interesting, and it's such a great concept for us to kind of look at it from that different viewpoint, because I know, and sometimes, and we look at it like it's got to be a one for one, like I have a best friend, and my best friend, I'm their best friend, and they're my best friend. And it's like an equilibrium relationship. And sometimes it doesn't work out that way, but really kind of opening up that doorway a little bit to recognize there's certain people in our life where we give out a lot more to them than we're ever going to receive back. And that's okay. That's a good thing. So the other part is that when we talk about champions, is us being our own champion. And how can we be on our own side to give ourselves the grace and the unconditional love that we need? How do we do that? What does that look like? If each of us right now take a moment and we think about somebody who's a champion in our world, either today or in the past, that we have been filled with love, and what it was about that person that made us feel that way, and then think, how can we pour into ourselves with that same grace and love? I'll give you an example. I was in the airport several years back, and I was really struggling with forgiveness and kind of not beating myself up so much. And I'm walking through the airport, and I literally stopped in the middle of the aisleway of the airport. And I thought to myself, if my husband can love me so unconditionally and forgive me for anything that I've ever done, and just the snap of his fingers, just love me and meet me where I am, why can't I do that for myself? Can't I do that for myself? And recognizing that I can. So for example, I set some goals today. I didn't make my goals. I used to beat myself up. I can't believe you didn't get that done. I didn't call about this. I didn't get that bill paid. I didn't check on so-and-so and send somebody a card, a thank you card. Now I give myself complete grace. And I say, it's okay. It's no problem at all. We're going to get that done tomorrow. There was obviously other things I needed to get done. And I give myself that same grace that's been given to me by champions in my world. Because what's really amazing, as Rick Hansen talks about positive neuroplasticity, that our brain is constantly learning of the interactions and the experiences that we have. And when we can experience grace onto ourselves and to give ourselves that benefit of the doubt, we actually can also give that goodwill to others. And it also works reverse. Sometimes we can give to others and show up as a champion and be loving and kind to others. And then we can kind of pour into ourselves a little bit more, recognizing that we're a kind, loving person, going back to the importance of intention and motive. My intention and my motive is to be kind and loving here, to be helpful, so I don't feel helpless. And so that's the kind of that idea of what we do and how we can do that. And it's an active listening, sharing the wins of others. And we want to be able to take the chance to put ourselves out there, to be able to give to another person without the expectation, is it going to come back to me for this person? I don't know if I want to help them. I don't know if I want to do something for them because, they're not very grateful to me. They're not going to be grateful that I did that. They're not going to help me out the next time I need them. Does this sound familiar to you, Kathleen? Have you ever had this dialogue in your head?
Sure. Again, it's a growing process, I think.
Yeah, I do too. I've had this conversation in my brain of, I want to go do, I should go help that person do something. And sometimes I'm like, the last 3 times I needed something from them, they weren't very helpful. And it's this idea of this growth and this learning curve that I've been on, is that I want to give the opportunity, and I'm not going to worry about the outcome, because it's okay if that person's not going to give back to me, because I know somebody else down the road will be there to help me on my journey. It doesn't necessarily need to be that person. And so that's kind of this concept of being a champion for ourselves and being a champion for others. Recognizing that we play this role in the world, and to show up for ourselves, to be on our own side, so that our brain knows we're going to always be okay, and that we're going to show up for ourselves. We're going to be resilient, and that when we're building relationships with other people, we can truly give from a sincere motive without expectation. So I have to ask, if Kathleen, have you ever had any of these moments in your world of a conversation that you've had with somebody that sticks with you today, of those words that you needed to hear so badly?
Yeah, definitely. Like we were talking about before, growth, opening up my DJ business, if you will. There was quite a few times that, some people come across as, I guess, if you want to call it, for a learning curve,
Yep.
an eye opener and a learning curve at the same time. But you kind of get the gist, and you figure it out, if you can, how to move forward with something such as a harsh compliment. I call it a compliment. Right. It's a harsh compliment, but you take it and you do something with it, and you turn it around into something positive. So yes, I have encountered that.
Yeah, exactly, because it's that idea that our brains are continually learning, and we're looking and seeking the good, because what we seek is what we will always find.
Definitely.
And recognizing sometimes it's not all about us.
Right. Definitely. And I've given it back tenfold.
Right.
Anytime somebody has needed something, for the most part, I want to say 95% of the time, if you love and if you're passionate about what you do, and you get that solid advice and you figure it out, then you can take it and you can give it to somebody else, whether it's younger or older, somebody in a situation that they can't get out of, and you try to help them either or way, you're there for them.
Absolutely. So thank you for joining me today, and I look forward to joining you again for our next episode in this series.
Thanks again, Anne.
Thank you.